Okay, so when you think Triceratops, what comes to mind? Probably something you've seen in a movie, right? Well, I want you to forget all of that. We're going to go back 66 million years to a place called the Hell Creek Formation in North America to meet one of evolution's absolute masterpieces. This wasn't just another dinosaur. No, this was one of the most successful, most powerful plant eaters to ever walk the planet. So let's get ready to go way beyond the myth and find out what the true power of the Triceratops really was.
We're essentially peeling back all those layers of pop culture to get to the scientific heart of this magnificent animal. This is its story, the story of its incredible power, its surprisingly complex life, and its sudden, totally tragic end.
For decades, we've all seen the same old story play out. The mighty T-Rex shows up, and the Triceratops is just its destined meal. But you know what? The fossil record tells a completely different story. So today, we're going to take that myth, and we are going to dismantle it. The Triceratops wasn't some passive victim. It was an absolute beast, a formidable adversary, a living fortress that even the king of all predators would have to think twice, maybe three times about confronting.
To really get a handle on its power, we have to start with its design. And I mean, the body of a Triceratops wasn't just big, it was a masterpiece of biological engineering. It was built for one thing, and one thing only, to completely dominate its environment. Let's just start with pure mass. The largest males could hit nearly 12 tons. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that's like taking two of the biggest African elephants you can find and squishing them into one animal. This wasn't just dead weight either. This was raw power, packed into every single bone and muscle. And here's the thing, all that weight was squeezed into a pretty compact 9-meter-long frame. See, unlike some of those long, slender dinosaurs, Triceratops had an incredibly low center of gravity. Its body was short, it was wide, and it was just ridiculously muscular. It wasn't built for speed, no. It was built for unstoppable force and rock-solid stability. But here's a crucial little detail that fossils don't really show you at first glance. You know those bone cores of the horns we see sitting in museums? Well, those are just the base. In real life, they were covered in a thick sheath of keratin, the same stuff our fingernails are made of. This would have made them way longer, much sharper, and just far more lethal weapons than the fossils alone would lead you to believe. So all of this really points to one single conclusion. Every single part of its anatomy was built for combat and for resistance. The skeleton was incredibly dense. It had this broad pelvis and a short trunk that basically anchored it to the ground. And you can see these massive attachment points for muscles on its neck, its chest, and its legs. It all shows an animal designed to push, to shove, and to absorb just incredible impacts. It really truly was a tank with a backbone. So we've established we have this powerful fortress of an animal. But did it face the world all by itself? Well, when we try to figure out the social life of Triceratops, the fossil record gives us this fascinating and, honestly, surprisingly complex puzzle. The conflict in the evidence is pretty striking. I mean, for a lot of its relatives, like Centrosaurus, we've found these massive bone beds. We're talking dozens, sometimes hundreds of individuals who all died together. That's really strong evidence for herding. But with Triceratops, the story is just different. Out of more than 50 pretty complete skeletons that have been found, almost every single one of them was alone. The only exception we've ever found is one single site with 3 juveniles together. So what on earth does that mean? Well, this puzzle has led paleontologists to 3 main ideas. First, maybe the adult Triceratops were just so huge and so well-armed that they simply didn't need a herd for protection. They were solitary giants. A second idea is that the young ones, who were obviously more vulnerable, might have formed their own juvenile herds for safety, and that one fossil site is a little snapshot of that behavior. Or maybe they lived in small family groups, like 5 to 10 individuals, which would be a lot harder to preserve altogether in the fossil record. The truth is, we're still trying to piece this puzzle together. Okay, now let's zoom in on its most iconic feature, that magnificent head. It was not just a simple arrangement of horns and a shield. Oh no. It was a complex, multifunctional tool that served as a weapon, a shield, and a giant, fleshing billboard. That frill alone was an absolute marvel of evolution. You see, unlike a lot of its cousins that had big holes in their frills to save weight, the Triceratops' frill was a solid slab of bone, a true shield for its vulnerable neck. It was also a massive anchor point for the powerful muscles that operated its plant-crushing jaws. And those grooves for blood vessels? They suggest it could actually flush with blood, changing color for display, and maybe even help regulate its body temperature, kind of like an elephant's ears do today. The bones, they tell us so much, but they're only part of the story, right? Reconstructing the living, breathing animal requires us to look at even finer clues, things that were preserved in the rock against all odds.
And thankfully, we have more than just bones to go on. We have fossilized skin impressions that show us it wasn't smooth-skinned like a rhino, but was covered in these large polygonal scales. Some of those scales were even raised into these bony bumps called osteoderms, adding yet another layer of armor. That highly vascularized frill almost certainly means it could flush with vivid colors for showing off. And, just like deer antlers today, every Triceratops had a totally unique set of horns and frill patterns, signaling its age, its health, and its status to any others around.
Now, an animal this well defended doesn't just evolve in a vacuum. It evolves in response to pressure. And in late Cretaceous North America, that pressure had a name: Tyrannosaurus Rex. What we have here is one of the greatest examples of a co-evolutionary arms race in the history of life. For millions of years, these two giants were locked in this deadly dance. The increasing power of the T-Rex's bite drove the evolution of a stronger Triceratops shield, and in turn, the lethal horns of the Triceratops drove the evolution of a smarter, more cautious predator. They literally shaped each other's destiny.
And you know what the best part is? We don't just have to theorize about this. We have the receipts frozen in stone. We found Triceratops frills with healed T-Rex bite marks, which is proof positive they survived these encounters. We have puncture wounds on skulls that perfectly match the horns of another Triceratops, proving they fought violently among themselves. And tragically, we also have unhealed bite marks that show us exactly how a T-Rex would try to take one down, often attacking the hip region to try and immobilize it first. This was a brutal world, and these fossils are like its war journals.
For millions of years, the Triceratops dynasty absolutely thrived. It was a dominant force in its ecosystem. And its end wasn't some slow decline. It wasn't a fading away. It was an abrupt, catastrophic event that came literally from the sky. Just look at this timeline. One moment, 66 million years ago, Triceratops is at the absolute peak of its power. The very next, a 6-mile-wide asteroid slams into the planet. The immediate impact triggered mega tsunamis and earthquakes, but the real killer was what came after, a planet-wide cloud of dust and soot that blocked out the sun, causing temperatures to plummet and plants to die off everywhere.
And I really want you to make no mistake about this. Triceratops was not on its way out. It was perfectly adapted, it was wildly successful, and it was abundant. It wasn't defeated by any earthly competitor. This was a thriving dynasty, a king in command, that was basically vaporized in a geological instant by a cosmic catastrophe.
And it leaves us with this truly mind-bending question. I mean, if that one rock had just missed, what would the next 10, 20, or 60 million years of ceratopsian evolution have even looked like? Could there have been even larger, more powerful, more ornate forms? It's a future we'll just never get to know, and it's a testament to the sheer power and the totally unpredictable nature of our planet's history.